Okay, good evening, everybody, and welcome to the workshop of the City of Kingston Tree Commission. Today is Thursday, it is January 26th, and we were here really to focus on the new proposed zoning code for the City of Kingston. It's called Kingston Forward, and we're looking at articles for the that would be of interest to the City of Kingston Tree Commission. So we have our guest tonight, Bartek Starda, who is the housing director, but he has basically been the city's lead person, working with the consultant Stover Cole and partners on getting the Kingston Forward document together. There is a presence on the City of Kingston website called engagekingston.com. So anybody that's listening to this hopefully will go there and look at it as well. There is a public hearing. I'm going to let everybody know there's a public hearing that is scheduled right now for February 13th. And it will be here at City Hall in person and on Zoom. There's also will be continued public comment accepted after that hearing up until the 18th right now. That's right, 18. Yeah. So I'm just going to have the members introduce themselves around the table. We're still waiting on a couple members, but we are going to get started in essence of time. Again, I'm Sue Cahill. I'm the planning director for the City of Kingston.
Elizabeth Collins on the Tree Commission, and I'm a representative for the Memorial Tree Fund. And I have to leave at 6 o'clock because I have another.
Okay.
Karen Tay from the Tree Commission. Amanda O'Neill from the Tree Commission.
Okay. And
Kyla DJ from the Planning Office.
Okay, so Bartek, I'm going to just turn it over to you. You want to introduce yourself or just go right in? I know you've got some time constraints as well, so I'll hand it over.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. My name is Bartek Starda. As you mentioned, I'm the Director of Housing Initiatives for the city. I've been in this role for the past year. It's past my 1-year anniversary. And for the entire time, after that 1 year, I've been working on this new zoning code. The last time the city got a new zoning code was in the 1960s. And that was the city's first zoning code. So this is the city's second zoning code. And it's a big deal because in all likelihood, the city won't get another zoning code for the next 50 to 100 years. And so this is, we're talking about a generational change that's about to happen. This will impact all aspects of life here in Kingston. I have about a 10-minute presentation. I'm going to give you just a short background on what's in the zoning code and some of the other rules. And then the second half, I have a few slides on the zoning code as it intersects with trees and the areas of trees that the zoning code impacts. So just to know, the process for drafting this code began in 2021. We did some initial analysis and visioning. We set some big goals for the rezoning process. We released the first draft of the form-based code in the spring of last year. The second draft was released in September. In September of last year, and then we submitted the final draft to the Common Council back in December. Right? We didn't just come up with this code by ourselves. We had several dozen meetings and opportunities for input. And one thing to note is that previous to the current draft that's available, we released 2 full drafts to the public. And we received hundreds of comments on each of those drafts. We responded to each comment received, and that's all published on engagekingston.com. So there were a lot of topics that were covered in the public comments. It's not reflected in the ones that you see here, but we did receive, let's say, a few dozen written comments on trees specifically. And so that influences and is reflected in some of what I'm sure later in the presentation.
Bartek, just kind of what were those three comments? Do you recall like what?
I think there was a lot of concern that trees, that there should be protections for trees in the public right of way. And some concerns and prodding about whether the zoning code changes any of those protections, or if there's a process, if a tree needs to be removed. And then I think there were just some comments in general that trees should be a priority for the city when it comes to development, street retrofits, and new streets as well.
Okay, so just to be clear for the commission, the zoning code, the adoption of the zoning code will not affect the tree or the street tree ordinance that we have. There may be some changes needed to that to reflect what the code says, but the obligations, the tree commission will still exist and continue to go forward and still have your authorities the way you do now for overseeing the street trees.
Yes, it does not touch that, and in fact, it reinforces them. So I'll share about that a little bit later. So I'm not going to go into what's in the big zoning code, but I just do want to share the big ideas of the goals. There are 7 goals for the zoning code. So first, we're trying to make it possible for smaller development to take place in the city of Kingston and encourage that development by simplifying the approvals process. We are trying to better define the building to street relationship. So having new development that fits the context of existing neighborhoods in Kingston. Housing affordability is a big issue, of course. We're trying to encourage and legalize a wider variety of housing types in the city. Of course, the environment and supporting sustainable development is a top priority.
What's an ADU?
An ADU is an accessory dwelling unit. So this is a residential unit that's an accessory to a principal residential unit. So like someone living in a garage structure that's been retrofitted. Yeah. Too much. One of my goals is for everyone in the city in the next year to know what ADU stands for. Maybe street design is part of the zoning code. We do, and I'll share a bit about that later on. Parking, so we want to make sure that we allow enough parking to support business activity, but not require too much, which might discourage building reuse. Or, we certainly don't want to pave over the entire city. And finally, within the current zoning code, there's some trouble spots, there's some confusion, and there's a lot of non-conforming lots. And what that means is that if these buildings were built today, they could not be built. Most of the stuff here, for instance, could be built. There's a lot of that throughout the city. In the zoning code, you'll see this map, okay? The zoning code regulates land will regulate land in Kingston via what we call transects. There's 5 transects. The darker purples that you see on this map, these are the areas of highest residential and commercial activity and the highest density. And then you kind of go from the urban to the most rural, which are the T2 conservation and T1 areas. So think of it as a continuum from the dark purple to the green. And you see that the highest level of density is allowed, along Broadway, uptown, along Cornell, and then in the Rondo.
So,
Yes, go ahead.
is it transect like the same as kind of like the context of situation? Like the,
Yes, exactly. Well, to some extent. But yes, our goal is for the streets to match the context through which they run. So yes, there's a match. I'm not going to go into this, but if you go into the zoning code, you'll see that each transect has its own regulating standards. So the proposed code is a form-based code. So we're focusing less on what's in the building and more about how a building looks. So, right, where should a building be placed on the lot? How tall should it be? If there is parking, where that parking should be in the rear. And this is all prescribed in the code itself. I do want to just briefly touch on one key goal of the rezoning, which is housing access. A key goal for me is to allow more housing types throughout the city, and this is reflected in the zoning code. And then I do just want to quickly mention, I mentioned before that one of our goals is to reduce the administrative burden of development. And one of the ways that we'll do so is by creating a new review board called the Minor Site Plan Review Board. And this board would be made up of individuals within City Hall, led by the Director of Planning. And it would review smaller projects that are seeker type 2 and that consist of 1 to 2 lots. So major projects would still go before the planning board, but anything deemed a minor project would be streamlined by going through this minor site plan.
And is that to try to get things to go through faster?
Yes. Yeah. And this is the last general slide I have, but these are some of the other important changes that I think are good to point out. Now, in terms of the tree commission, this map and the map that I shared earlier, I think, in contrast with the current zoning code, reflects the city's open space plan. So areas deemed by the city's open space plan are generally zoned as the conservation areas or natural areas you saw in green, in contrast to the current zoning code. So I think that is a key improvement. Article 5 are street design standards. These are not standards that are within the current zoning code. And they are quite clear in calling for the protection of existing street trees and also addition of new ones wherever there's space. And new streets are always required to have street trees. The second bullet point here, which is a quote from the proposed code, and I mentioned how we're reinforcing the power of the tree commission. So mature, healthy trees in the right of way shall be preserved unless justified through a deviation. And tree removal shall conform to the guidelines of the tree commission, and then references those existing standards. And we do say that every tree that is removed from a public right of way needs to be replaced to make up for anything removed.
But I think the interesting part in that statement is that it's replaced by obviously smaller trees, but the total combined DBH has to equal that of the removed tree. We had somewhat of a small discussion about that at our last meeting when we were talking about an individual that removed a tree. So here is where this is going actually into a code. So it's really reinforcing what we were getting at last month. So that's, I just wanted to point that out. I think that's a really good
That's
move.
even more of piggyback on changing our.
Exactly, right. And that's something we talked about reflecting in
Yeah.
our own code. So again, the two will then be consistent.
And I do think one thing I've learned from being in the city for a year, when we talk about street retrofits, right, there's a need to be flexible, right? Because the city's street network is old, right? There's a constrained right of way in many cases. There's a lot of trees that are just, that do need to be removed. And so I think this keeps the flexibility that we need to actually complete street projects. While also balancing that with the desire for strong tree canopy in the city.
Yeah, because I figure like maybe in some instance, like you cannot plant many trees, like you can only one mature trees, but maybe there's a way to kind of be able to find another location where like all the other trees could be planted, figure out a way to kind of compensate when the site is, very small.
Yeah.
Or maybe find like a bigger tree, that would be able to kind of maybe replace the exact, depending on how much of the tree is.
Yeah. So I did mention before that this is a form-based code, right? So for any lot, we're prescribing where a building should be placed. But at the same time, we're also quite clear that those standards can be adjusted to also comply with various environmental goals that we have. So if we say, on this particular lot, the building needs to be placed 5 feet from the sidewalk, as an example, happens to be a tree there. That's a mature tree that maybe we want to keep. It's quite clear in the code that building placement can be changed so that there's not a conflict with mature trees or other sensitive environmental features of the lot. And then we have parking lot standards as well. So I did include the current language under parking lot standards, which specifies that the ends of parking aisles and surface lots that are more than 15 spaces in length shall incorporate landscape planting areas at either end of the row. Each planting area shall include at least 1 tree. Yes.
Because I see that in some parking, there's actually some planting, but it doesn't allow the water to get into it. So I'm thinking that they're like a cross, pollination between, like the storm management plan and this to kind of allow, because it's I feel like sometimes it's a missed opportunity when you see all this planting, but it's curved. There's a 6-inch curve around.
Yes, and someone actually made that comment already. And we changed, if you look at the parking lot standards 40516, we changed the language to say that to incorporate this, that a planting area doesn't have to have a curve around it, but it could just be like an area. So it's something you might want to review and see if that fits your comment, because I agree with you.
Yeah, I feel like
it doesn't actually help if there's a concrete curb around.
Yeah, and it happens often, like I see it like in new parking and I'm like, how can you build a parking and then catch the water filter? So,
I'll make a note of that as well.
Because I feel like more than it doesn't have a curb, I think it shouldn't have, or it should have like some kind of, like they do the various things.
Yeah. Absolutely, great. And this is the last slide that I have. So another key aspect of the code is that we say that for any site, development site, 5,000 square feet or greater, there has to be 10% of that space devoted to usable open space. And we have standards in the code for what that open space should be. We don't want this to be an afterthought or just a patch of grass. It's meant to be usable open space. And so we do say that required usable open space will include at least 20% shade through the preservation or planting of trees or construction of structures that provide shade. That is the current language. Yes.
Sorry.
Yes.
If we say like we can substitute the trees for a structure, then you can imagine like this space with grass everywhere and a structure, and that will do very little, to the environment. So I'm just like concerned about,
Yeah, I mean, can you explain what you mean by glass? I mean, my idea was like a gazebo
Right,
kind of structure.
exactly, but like if, imagine like if we have like a gazebo, like this is a park, you know, the
Yeah.
space, and we have like the gazebo is like this here, and this is all grass, and the lawn is kind of like the less eco-benefiting, you know, of the environment. So I just wonder if there is a way to, providing shade is great, providing shade with trees should be,
The priority?
yeah,
Yeah.
you know, what I mean, like, and also they are like in a way, I know like in some of the notes, there is something about pollinator, you know, like friendly kind of like planting, you know, so I just wonder if this could be also encouraged from the beginning into conserving open space with like not grass and trees, because it's often what happens, it's like you have grass, you have trees, and you don't have, you know, canopy in the middle.
Yeah.
So, if we can add more like encouraging, you know, like from the beginning instead of after coming and say, oh, to that,
I agree.
like there's 7 layers,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I think they should push as much as possible to create, you know, like this.
That's all I had. So I think the main point I want to get across, and I am noting these two comments. In terms of trees, you know, there's the usable open space provisions. There's the parking lot standards, and then there's also the street design standards. You know, those are the 3 areas of the code where trees are clearly referenced. I think overall, taking a step back, this is an improvement upon the zoning code as it relates to trees, encouraging tree plantings and encouraging their protection. But certainly want to make sure that we're getting it completely right. So any feedback would be great.
I just have a question on when you, in the, like, the section where you show the, you know, the cross sections of the streets, on the bottoms, you say, with the planting area description, you talk about the use, it says, tree grates, and then it says soil cells encouraged. I'm presuming that means like that structural soil that we were talking about, where it's more of a cellular, it aids in retention of water and moisture in the soils so that it improves the growing area. But the tree grates is something, we've actually kind of started to move away from tree grates along streets. So I'm just thinking maybe, you know, I don't want to make it sound like we're going to require tree grates along the streets, because we're moving away from that. Typically, they don't get taken appropriate care of, and they're supposed to, you know, be widened as the tree grows, so they're maintenance, they become a maintenance thing where they become broken, and they become more of a tripping hazard than a preventive measure. So it's just, that's just a note, something that I picked up on. I don't know, the commission members in the Bartek's time is very limited. So I don't know if any commission members have any other questions for him while he is here. But I agree, it's a huge improvement. Trees really are, there's very little mention of trees. And particularly in the public right of way, there's no mention of trees in our current code. So this is a huge improvement with that respect. But form-based does take into account the streetscape, which our current code does not. So that's where we're really gaining a lot of ground here. And I just, one question, I don't know if any commission members are interested, but obviously there's a process that's been established. Complete Streets is now involved in the review process based on, you know, how it's being laid out here when new streets are developed, and also for the restructuring of old. And I know that they have come to the commission in the past, the engineering department, when they're redoing a whole streetscape. I'm presuming that's still going to take place, even though it's not shown in the flow chart. That process will still happen.
Right, it's not shown here. The only reference is to when a tree would need to be removed. Then they would need to come
Okay,
here. Yeah.
And but exactly,
go ahead.
I was thinking like, because it seems like the tree commission comes for like, they're from full of trees, but not when there are like trees to be planted and move after that to that, what, you know, species are like the most adequate for the city.
Mhm.
There's like, you know, like how to make it as diverse as possible. So we're just wondering if there's a way to kind of like, I'm thinking on top of the open space, you know, like, like so many trees planted, and I would think like the tree commission would be like a necessary step before implementation to make sure like the tree chosen would be like native, you know, would be like diverse, would be what the city needs.
Should we add language? We do have language around encouraging the use of native species. But we could say, I don't know if it's strongly encouraged or required that that an applicant should reference the most recent, you know, list of approved trees from the tree commission. That's certainly not.
I would say so.
I think that would be, yeah, that would be helpful, absolutely, because what we do is that what we're hoping to do in we're working on rewriting the tree section of the code right now. And we're looking at taking that list completely out of the code and making it a separate document that the commission has the ability to adjust on a, you know, maybe an annual basis, or if there's something that we see that comes, you know, along, we can do it immediately. So we don't have to go through a process with the county council.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're right, you need to be able to change it on the fly.
Yeah, so that,
And I think they also like, I mean, we've seen in some development where they would just pick one tree that would be on the list and just do like a monoculture process, which is not what biodiversity is.
Yeah.
Someone there's something also to advise about, you know, utilizing like using native planting, but also make sure there's diversity. They cannot just like going, then it doesn't deserve like as much as it could. And also on the open space, like the same comment for like the parking, you know, it's like the island planted to be like receiving all the water. I was just wondering, the open space, since it's going to work with like some building facility, if this open space can be also tied into like having the water, you know, kind of harvest it somewhat into the landscape and not be like totally disconnected from the grid space that would just shoot the water straight into the storm.
I do know what you mean.
Because I feel like when we have like 2 acres or more of land and you still have the water going into like the infrastructure, it doesn't make sense to me.
Yes,
It's an opportunity.
it's an opportunity.
Yeah, and it is for like any, I mean, all the sites that are like it's quite, they all have an opportunity to address, you know, this, which is a big issue.
Yes, I agree. You know, I do think, you know, I'm just trying to think about how. I have to think.
Yeah, I mean, on that note, there are already some stormwater retention laws in effect that don't allow for additional stormwater to go off-site. So there are requirements in the code, not in the zoning code, but in other portions of the code that allow stormwater to stay on site and be treated. So connection to city services or city storm sewers are not, I think there's very few instances where that would even be permitted. If it might have to be collected and contained on and then overflow. There might be potential for that, but there are sections of the code that speak to that outside of the zoning. So if it doesn't fit there.
Okay.
The neighbors talked about the tricks of the size of the streets, etc. Coming from living on my residence is on Franklin Street with a sidewalk project that just commenced. A lot of the trees were removed, and it's kind of point of attention to a lot of the people in that community. A lot of trees have been planted, but obviously they're a lot smaller. And the homeowners didn't get a choice whether they got a tree or not. That same thing's gonna be starting on Henry Street. Is that next year now? This year coming?
Yeah.
Because there was a pin put in that because somebody left or something. Something put that off another year, whatever. Are there gonna be other sidewalk projects going on more streets?
Certainly. I think as you probably saw on Franklin, it takes a long time for these projects to come together. So I think that's one of the reasons why there aren't a lot of street retrofits that happen in the city, but we do know that they will happen, they continue to happen in the future. And so one goal is that these guidelines will, set some boundaries and for those projects, and that the city could follow with that. So.
Because the unevenness like that coming like from the ability to just walk down the sidewalk doesn't exist in a lot of areas in the
Yeah,
city.
there's certainly. Those street retrofits, will come into play for a project like Franklin, where it's not like the road was just repaved, right? The curb, it was a whole new curb, whole new sidewalk, a whole street retrofit. So that's when those standards will come into play.
So I have a comment on this table for 523A. And it says like no two plans of food like 30 feet of center. And I just double checked with like the New York City, like standards. And there is like from 20 to 30, depending, the species. And I feel like sometimes we have like smaller, canopy trees that can have to be like 30 feet of center. So I was just wondering if we can extend it to like between 20 and 30 instead of making like 30, because we can maybe at some point put more trees, depending on the species.
Which table are you talking about? 22 or
23A, I believe, right?
Yeah.
I think it's 23A.
And
You have to go, we can take,
Okay.
we'll just continue to take notes and pass them along.
thank you.
Thank you for listening and for engaging.
Thanks, Bart.
So you were talking, so can you just do that again? So shady trees, you're talking about the 30 foot off center?
Yeah, exactly. That's one of them. Like 30 feet of
So you
center.
talked about the
You're saying
license
have more
for
flexibility
the
there. Yeah.
Remember
that?
Yeah.
Because
They
sometimes
want
it's
also
just
that, they never
and
consulted
they
us.
don't like 30 feet.
Can I add all that?
So like if you go check is good for next New York City.
Okay.
And it says 20 to 30. So we just want to-
It's what?
Not 20 feet.
20 feet?
Yeah.
Yeah, the
Okay.
plastic tag.
Because you said it's more frequent now.
I was never consulted.
Yeah.
And they said that they can't consult all the homeowners.
So they
That's
should-
part of the
Because I was
plan.
just looking at the notes, I mean, there would have to be some flexibility anyway, because, you've got, you're doing roadways, you've got driveways, you've got other, crosswalk, you're gonna have to, a little bit of flexibility, so.
Right, but not really.
You know, the
side like.
But it might not be his position.
I'm just.
So right now, it's pretty much for C4 and C5 across the board, it's 30 foot on center typically as a planting. Are you thinking that maybe the local and the collector, maybe not the arterials, but
Right.
maybe the local and the collector
Right.
should be a
Yeah.
denser,
Okay.
more frequent?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I got you. So you're suggesting 20 feet for those? Is that what you were saying?
It says 20 to 30, instead of being like 30, like to give.
Okay, so 20 to 30
Yeah.
across the board or just for the local
Maybe local and collector.
and collectors?
Yeah, makes
Well-
sense, because like the arterial, maybe like.
Yeah, that's
you
true.
Maybe get bigger trees, we need more space, but I was looking like,
But some places under utilities too, where you put the smaller.
Yeah,
so,
that's
You know,
Yeah, that's
So
true.
maybe across the board.
Yeah, that's true.
yeah,
That's a good one.
because we have so many.
Yeah.
I have a question that I think probably shows my ignorance of city planning. Why is this called a form-based code? Are we following some scheduled form? Is that the idea? I mean, how is it different from something else?
Basically, it's an architectural.
Yeah,
heavy-
it's more visual, more formless like what you're looking at the context when you're doing new development. So you're looking at the context of the street, so you might look 150 feet that way, 150 feet that way, and try to kind of balance it, make it compatible. It's a style, it's not, we're not following anything specific, but it's,
You're not following like a.
it's not
formulation
rigid.
Well,
schedule.
it talks to what types of porches you can have, how the building, where the building is placed on the
Yeah.
property. You actually, your current project fits in very well with
Yeah.
form, so you're already,
You were doing it, you didn't know.
I know, I
I was just talking about just what form-based code was, as opposed to.
So what's the difference between local and collector then?
I'll bring up the map.
It's
But, you
the,
know,
But I mean, I see that,
oh, yeah,
one crucial difference too is, Bartek mentioned it slightly, under our current kind of Euclidean zoning, a lot of what the government does is tells people how they can use their building. So in Ward 3, where I am, it's single family homes. People can't have a business, right? There was a person who was repairing cars, only had one car in the driveway at a time, barely noticeable, except the person across the street saw it was a new car every few days, and so reported him and forced him to close down his business. Right? Yeah. So, that's what the current zone does. It's the government telling people how they can use the properties. It still happens under this, but
there's more.
it's more of a focus
there's a
on
lot
how
more
things look and
flexibility.
feel, as opposed to how you can use here specifically.
So there's a map on the table that is the street types.
just what changes those, I mean, I understand the compact arterial, but
Okay,
like
so
by looking at them, I
local
understand what those
streets
are.
are, the way the code defines local streets, they provide access to all land uses by travelers moving a short distance. Collector streets would be the next, so they're probably like the smaller streets and the tighter areas. Collector streets are larger, they provide access to all land uses and serve to connect local and arterial streets for travel of a medium distance. Okay, and then your arterial, there's compact arterial and regular arterial. And they're more of your main thoroughfares, so like Broadway, Washington Avenue, those streets are more arterial type, okay?
And I can, if you want to see, like, I can just put up the local streets on here, so you can see which ones are shown as local.
Right.
On the
What
map.
Pilot is using is a software program, Gridix. And if you do go to the engagekingston.com site and go to Kingston Forward, you can play around with this yourself. So it's really interesting and it allows you,
These are local.
like what she's doing, she's just putting layer over layer, but you can do this yourself on your own computer at home. So it's kind of an interesting, user-friendly, once you get used to it.
It's called Gridix.
Gridix, it's right on the website and you can,
Click on collector.
So I'll unclick local.
yeah.
And then you can see what so the collectors basically collect the locals.
Okay, the locals
You know,
feed into
they're the
those, which
age,
then feed
yeah.
into the arterials.
Mm-hmm. It's a tiered type of.
I see that.
Which one are you looking at, the C2 rural collector?
Yeah.
Okay,
And I noticed that this is the only one.
hang on, let me get there, Okay, C2 rural collector.
And so it's in planting area, we said no. This is the only one that says like non-agricultural. And all the other are like some kind of like, accommodation, and this one for some reason, so I just wanted to know why. Change that.
It's a good question.
Okay.
Let's see where the moral life is.
Okay, just ready on the page.
Little tabs.
Okay.
And I would also question, when we are talking about it, really great, because they are trying to, and I think there's a substitute is actually to kind of like build up, but to have like, some kind of like special soil underneath.
Okay.
So because I was just wondering, maybe so that there's no more tree gates, so they're gonna build up all the way, to the tree without having the same space under for the tree. You know what I mean? Like,
So like a raised, almost a
I
raised.
mean, sometimes they could put like some bricks and stuff like around, but
Right.
it's like, we have like this kind of like special kind of like, how do you know, it's a special soil, that it's,
I know what you mean, yeah.
that goes under, so like the pavement goes closer to the tree, but underneath we have the same kind of like material, and it's kind of like make people to compact it, because it stays small.
Right, and I don't think by not wanting tree grades, you're saying to pave up to the tree.
Oh, no.
Right, yeah.
I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah,
I'm just thinking, we put, a while ago when they did a project before the current Broadway project, they used tree grades on Broadway.
Right.
And
Yeah, no,
they just, they put them in and they
Yeah, it's a mess.
left them there. And no one went in on a regular basis to check and make sure that they weren't like strangling
Yeah, no.
the trunk of the tree as the tree grew, because you're
Right.
supposed to remove the rings or whatever as the tree gets larger. And no, it just didn't happen. So it's, and I've looked around and a lot of communities are going or walking away from that type of thing.
No, I agree, I just wanted to make sure that you understand that this is not.
Right.
Oh, yeah, no, that's not, yeah, I don't think.
No, because I think still the planting strip, minimum.
Yeah,
would still
okay.
have to be.
How can we ensure proper soil usage for future sidewalk projects? I mean, it was the recommendation for Franklin and Henry, and Franklin did not follow through with that usage.
It's in the spec. They said they did. It's in the specification that structural soils were to be used.
Let's look too, and we never saw it.
When they did the
Okay.
tree wells and they did the sidewalks, they didn't put any structural, they just put item 4, wire meshing. And
I can follow through with engineering, but it is in the spec. It's in the spec for Henry Street too.
I took a look at it. It doesn't
Yeah.
appear to be. any
I mean,
structural
I
soil.
watched it happen every outside my house, and I never saw that.
Okay, that's an aside from this conversation, but
But I mean, for the future.
yeah, no, that's why I asked
There's
the
no-
question, when you see it where it says, it's mostly with the, like say, in the C5 Urban Center, the compact arterial, the planting area where it has the grates, it says soil cells encouraged. So that was my question. Does that mean that structural soil, that specific, type of, we call it structural soil, it's, it's just a mix, but, but that kind of soil application, I think, is important when you're talking about street trees.
Right.
It not only helps retain the moisture, but it also allows the roots to grow, and as everybody knows here, we don't deal with the heaving of the sidewalks or the curbs or paved areas. The roots are better served.
So what are you saying they put in on Franklin? It was item 4,
Oh, you mean,
or not Frank?
Yeah, Franklin, they dug up the old curb inside. And they just leveled the dirt. And they put item 4 on top of that, the wire meshing, the concrete. And then they poured the sidewalks. They didn't,
There
as
was
far
no
as I can
soil
tell,
underneath the
they didn't
sidewalk
bring
to
any-
accommodate the tree.
they didn't bring in any structures or any soil like that to promote root growth.
We'll check with engineering on that.
Well, it didn't appear that way, so.
Okay.
That was an observation, so.
I know it's in spec because we've checked them.
They took stuff out, plotted.
But that's the same guidelines that they have for Henry. Right. Same. And then the tree selection, too, appears that they did kind of more like a monoplanting with similar type trees on Franklin Street. And I don't remember them coming and giving us a view of what the tree species are that they're going to plant on Franklin. But maybe you've seen it, but I
They
don't.
only said at the Kingston at the Franklin Street meetings that they were going to refer to the list that the tree commission created for
Oh, so-
Henry Street. And that they were gonna go off the Henry Street list that was created, and they were going to get varieties from the 3 different size range.
Okay, I don't off the top of my head recall the exact species that went in, but I
And there's no
do know that we
markings.
gave them, they did ask,
Oh,
so
they
we
did.
gave them the list.
I remember reading the list.
Yeah,
And it came back and validated out of that list, how were they gonna, how are they gonna disseminate the trees so that you get different species across the whole length of the street?
right, well, you mean like you don't want like 4 of one planted in
Yeah,
it,
that's
you want it to be a variety along
Yeah,
the street,
right.
right, yes.
If they could go with
I mean, in some
more
cases, you're limited because of the location, you
Location,
know,
right.
there's wires overhead, you're
But they had
restricted to
about
the
5 or
types.
6
And they
size.
don't have, you know, an extensive variety, when you're talking about one length of it, you know, one section of a street. You're not gonna, you know, have 16 varieties, you're
Sure.
pretty much limited to 5, maybe 6
That would-
types, so
would have
that you
been
get
good
the,
if
you
they
get
did
the
that.
cost savings.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't, and where they got the trees, they got them from themselves, right? Whoever did the project design.
I think that, yeah, the contractor
Contractor.
The contractor did it, it was part of his, whether or not the contractor subbed that out, I don't know the specifics of that
I
project.
know, Kyle was
Yeah.
saying a while ago that we had some difficulties in getting trees
Last year.
last year. which
What?
is-
Difficulties getting species.
Yeah,
We also thought it could have been because of the time of the year too, which might have fallen to this project because they planted them so late.
so back to the zoning. Evan, I know you came in late, I don't know if you had any thoughts or whatever. Obviously, we're not making decisions tonight, this is strictly open discussion, on, you know, primarily Article 5 and 6.
I just have a question about the table 403.23.8.
Which table are you on? Oh, okay.
So, see like for the C5 compact material,
Uh-huh,
so it just only, I think every single one is talking about the planting strip but this one only mentioned about tree grade without mentioning like planting strip or, planting strip, and so that.
oh, okay, so it's, okay.
And the C2, the green part, the C2 and /C3, you can see the collector and the arterial is almost identical, like.
So you're saying that you feel that should also have the option of a planting strip, is that
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's just like the thing is
Okay.
like, I just don't know what's the purpose.
Why they took it out?
Yeah.
That would be a question we can ask. I don't
Well,
know.
I'm just looking at what that is, and that is
Broadway.
Yes, that's valid.
So that's the only street, so
Yeah.
maybe that's why,
Uh,
because that's what they're putting in. I mean, they're not doing it great, but they're doing.
Right, I think the one thing we have to think about, and I don't think putting that in as an option is a bad idea, because as the city grows, the street types are potentially going to change. So you might see Foxhall becoming more of a compact arterial. You might see, and I think that's subject to happen, and this is not going to be something that stays as is. It's going to be something that has to grow as the city grows. It changes, the city changes to the whatever circumstances there are. So I don't think putting a planting strip is a bad thing as an option, because you don't know, 15 years, 10 years from now, it could be something completely different.
Because I know like maybe they are focused on this like the new style of like, they kind of redo the sidewalk, like it's a different grade. But like there's some street, maybe some area they still have a strip, like they can look at into instead of more like concrete, they think, okay, let's do this more like organized like the whole street and like trees. So there's more green rather than, okay, just tree, different grade.
And I think like this, when I was reading like this article from the city, it says like planting strip preferred or tree. Like there is like, and yeah, I know it's very first, but I think it's nice to say preferred, when there's an option to kind of like having to connect, because then their life expectancy is going to be higher.
What is the purpose of a tree grate? To keep people from walking on the roofs? Is that the idea?
Tripping, mostly tripping, falling, yeah.
Or whatever.
Falling in the ditch where the
Well,
tree
yeah,
is?
like walking.
Falling off the pavement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, does it mean like, for example, on C5, it's like local, and it's like you want to forfeit minimum, to kind of like to the tree. If it's kind of like replacement of the tree, and because I see like uptown, most of like, the area, like sometimes are 2 feet, and the tree is great. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So like, does this also take place for replacement tree, or is it just like for all location?
I think that's just for like
New
tree renovation projects.
design.
That would be preferred.
Yeah.
I don't think that means you can plant something smaller or keep the tree at something smaller.
Because I feel like sometimes like 3 feet, I mean, the trees are doing great,
Even, 3 feet is hard to find in a lot of the existing. I mean, if you look around Kingston, getting something with a 3-foot width is hard to find in Kingston right now.
That's why I'm just concerned, like,
Local streets.
so even return, like, so then like if we say 4 feet minimum, we cannot plant anything that's 3 feet.
Right, but I think like Kyla was saying, these are design standards, so these would be applied, like if they were redoing a street, like when they're doing now, like Henry and Franklin, they are making those areas where the trees are growing in suitable enough so that they are. And I don't think, the thing I think that has to be thought about is that we're not talking perfect squares. You can have a rectangular area that might be 5 foot by 3 foot versus, just 4 by 4 or 5 by 5. So there's options, that can be looked at.
And for the street tree, you use natural / opportunistic. And the other like, I'm just wondering like, what's the reason behind it, right? Like, because the whole other area is like 30 OC type, which is, like the playing a straight, evenly spaced road alongside the travel lane. But like for this, the C2 / C3 is a natural opportunistic. And it kind of, the green covers the west side of.
There's a lot of
Right, I think,
sidewalks
well,
over
the
there.
C2,
Maybe
the
that's something to do
C2,
with
C3 areas, Evan, are more, like if you look, that's more rural
Okay.
type of setting, more suburban type of setting versus, so it would be maybe in your areas like that are like up on Pearl Street where you don't have sidewalks, or out Roosevelt Park where you don't have sidewalks. That's I think,
A
what
lot
the
of the
difference
roads
is.
behind Bailey and stuff right there, don't
Right.
big open area.
I know, thank you.
And then last comment.
Okay, we're in the open space section.
Because I'm a designer, it's
No, this is good, no, this is what we want.
Design point of view, but, for the park, the description said like basically the design will be all naturalistically like disposed.
And the park one?
Yeah. On
Yeah.
the park, you know,
Uh-huh.
and it implies that the park has to be naturalistic, naturalistic looking, and from where I'm from, and like, it's a living park with France are, that are not necessarily, like naturalistically disposed. And I suppose it was a strong statement to kind of, in the park, kind of do that, then it's 19th century.
Okay,
So
so,
the first one, you're talking about park.
right. So how would you,
I don't think like the way the park is designed as, because first of all, if it's built, it's not going to be natural, it's going to be homemade anyway. So I just,
are you talking more about like the visual diagram, or are you talking about the way it's worded
not
here?
it's wording, because it seems like if you do a park that doesn't coincide with like the 19th century idea of the park, then it's part of the criteria. And I'm just like, that's a design point of view.
So you're saying it doesn't allow for like a formal park,
Exactly.
like an English garden type
Or
park,
French.
French garden. Sorry. French garden, so like kind of.
Another type of garden,
Right.
it's like, it's, a very
Okay.
and I feel like maybe, it's still gonna be a park, and it's gonna be like something different.
Right, like we kind of agree, and I think of as kind of a formal park setting,
Right,
like
yeah.
you could have,
Exactly.
like, yeah,
And that doesn't mean that it's gonna have less eco benefits, not at all, it's just like the design, doesn't have to.
Okay,
right, which is actually what, like the Kingstonian park setting would be.
Yes.
More of a,
Exactly.
no mazes. I love a maze, I think that would be great, park.
Yeah, absolutely.
or
And that's
rose
it.
garden.
Yeah.
Rose garden?
Yeah,
I went to one in Virginia that was a whole section of a local town park. And when you did, you went in and you walked through different little areas and it was just beautiful.
like Saugerties has a scenic park, which has, they do the Mum Festival there, and it's just, it's kind of like, that's what it is, it's nice pathways that you see, yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay, good point. Okay.
For the figure, the whole part 2023.3, right, is that approval process?
What page are you on, Evan?
5.6, it's
5.6?
yes.
Okay,
So. Well, ideally, if we want to officially involve in the whole process, it should, that's the first question, is like, should tree commission be part of the diagram, because it's going to be obviously to say, okay, we are part of the official approval process. But if it's not, then what is our role in what stage, right? Because it goes to planning board, there's a review and action. Then that's it, right? They can,
Right.
like Department of Public Work, they can decide, they say, hey, I'm just going to move forward, I don't really need. But if it is something has a tree involved, then shouldn't they involve getting advice from the tree commission, right? And so if we don't really put it, like visually, then like there's it's optional.
yeah, I don't know if you were here when we talked about that. That question did kind of come up with the new process with involving Complete Streets Advisory Council, and where would the tree commission actually fit in
Okay.
to the review process? And we would still be in the process with respect to having, like, if they're doing a street restoration, reconstruction project coming to us in terms of removal of the trees and the new planting, as we do now, okay? It's not anywhere recognized officially, and that was something we did talk a little bit about. I can talk to Bartek a little bit more about it. If you feel strongly, there should be some kind of recognition in there. They do reference, that the tree commission, the ordinance is not going to be impacted by the adoption of this. So your duties still stay the same and your role still stays the same. It's just not, it would be good, I think, to have that connection though. I think you're right. So.
Yeah, I agree. I think it'd be nice to have it clear, like, this is the next step and like 2 days in the process.
Okay.
Going back to when Evan brought up, just modifying on the matrix about, the compact criteria for C5, and how you brought up, intending of some, like maybe Vauxhall to change to being under that criteria. It's something important to maybe look at with a different lens as we look at this document again. Because you did say that the last time, or the first time the city even had one was in the 60s, had zoning. And that projected wise, we should consider all of this to be the zoning plan for the next 50 years for the city. So with the concept of change and growth in the community, we should put that lens on when we look at things too.
Right. And I mean, obviously, what was adopted in the 60s has been modified and amended and adjusted, going through the years. This is just a major change.
Yeah.
And that hasn't happened in so long. There were changes that were done throughout the years, like in the 80s, with the LWRP, the riverfront area was completely rezoned. And we got the RFR and the RFH zone. There was other work that was done in the the Rondout district was established in the mid-80s. The RLC zone. So there were times that other larger changes when AVR came through. The city looked at a traditional neighborhood development zone overlay, and that was that was something that was a big change. So it happens, just this is citywide. So, but yeah.
And just like in the timeline, like, so February 18th, we did the last comments accepted. And after, what will be the next step? Like when, just to like, when will this be like in use? Like between.
That would be, that's the last public comment that's planned. So after that, it would be, it would be before the common council. With recommendations and public comments and then
A few months.
it depends on how that process goes. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, at the public hearing and the public comments that are received, the changes will be made.
What
And,
time will it be?
the planning board is looking at this now, the county planning board is looking at it now. Historic Landmarks Preservation Commission is looking at this now. So you've got those large, those commissions really taking hard looks at the entire document. This commission is looking at, and hopefully gonna provide some feedback, positive and that and negative, whatever. But yeah, so our next commission meeting will be probably trying to put together some kind of a formal recommendation from the commission.
Suggestion for them to change the order of this table to match the metrics. Because the metrics start from C2, C3, C4, C5. And the picture here is starting from C5, and then come back to C4.
Oh, so it goes the opposite direction.
Oh, okay. Okay,
It's kind of
I didn't notice that. Okay.
tricky to match.
So ordering, it should be, yeah, okay.
Oh,
This sounds good. I was talking about. So we have to go, or maybe we can talk later if there's stuff.
I'm sorry?
Maybe we can talk later if there's.
Yeah,
Okay,
absolutely.
great.
Do you have any thoughts you want to add in for the tree commission?
No, because I like what you all are saying. and,
Okay.
yeah, I think we're in a good direction.
Okay, good, all right,
All right, see you
thanks.
soon.
Okay, so I want to make a note of the order.
Use the older that's part of the tree commission.
Yes.
Ready, got children.
Painting area for the C5, right?
C5, yeah,
For the metric we match to C5 is the urban center, there's a compact ovary.
yeah,
I mean, that's fine, I just need to go back to match like the individual uses. Because everything almost say like 5 with a 5 foot tree grades, encouraged.
okay, so you're saying the diagram is not matched, the the specifics of this, the matrix don't follow through on the table here? Is
It's
that
like
what you're saying?
4 feet minimum, but every single one is say 5 tree grades for the C5.
Or minimum doesn't
Yeah,
carry over.
minimum didn't really include it, so if that's. the
Oh,
case,
I see what you're, okay.
They should just remove the 4.
All right, okay, I see what you're saying. So the matrix,
Sorry, my child is on it.
Yeah, like,
tables, cross sections. Okay.
Told you that is we do it.
Okay.
Okay, my more. I think that's. For now.
I mean, yeah, obviously, if you have other comments after tonight, I mean, that you read it through and you spend some time, and like I said, if you go on, this is the Kingston Forward that Kyla has up there. You just scroll to the bottom of the page, so you can see where the, if you go down to the bottom, you'll see,
All the way to the bottom.
where's the GridX link? I just wanted to show them where it was on the page.
I don't know, because I always go in from the.
Go down, go.
Scroll down. And on the side. Oh, links maybe?
Yeah. I know it's there, because I've,
I always just go in from the website, but. This is what. Let me go back up, I don't want to make you all dizzy, but.
it's too late.
Yeah.
Here, see, it's over there on the side, regularly,
only one.
special district floodplain. Review draft public comments.
Is there a search function that you can just type it in, or?
I don't think there is.
I thought
Oh,
there
wait,
was.
there it is, right there.
Right there. Community
Additional
review,
links.
GridX online interaction.
This might be a little bit, we have like the one with the password, so this is the public one, so this could be a little bit.
Oh, that's,
And
okay,
actually, the link.
working.
Okay.
Yep.
Go back. Oh. That's the code. Like, I'll have to check on that.
Okay.
In the code.
But you remember using it once, it has to be accessible, because I mean.
Yeah, okay,
Might have changed. Well, you stop sharing.
all right, good.
Are we able to add the utility, like the company section, right? Because, I mean, like, I understand like they have a work, to do, and they, but still, like, structure, right? I say, if they change the wire, like the side of the wire, right? Like, like sometimes you will see, okay, trying to avoid the tree, they will put the pole on one side, and like, they'll pull the utility line, and like when you pull the utility line, it's going to impact whatever the pole, right? Like those including zoning as well. So we even have that particular thing to regulate the utility company for, just regular.
I think that's a really good point to bring up, like how he said that like a house could be moved based on the tree, like shouldn't there be some regulations put forth to try to deter Central Hudson or any other utilities, bringing them up, from being able to just come in and take something out?
It's a-
I think that that's a good point. If they're changing everything to try to preserve these beautiful trees, then that should be a factor to try to set limitations. It's not always gonna fit, because sometimes you gotta do what you have to do, but
Yeah, I don't know that will happen. And
It's Central Hudson's only
but
interested in
again, I
providing
think
service.
Central Hudson is going to do
Yeah,
it.
so exactly.
Nothing else.
No matter
I mean,
the-
they've been able to successfully work with Central Hudson and on some of the
neighborhoods.
projects. I mean, I would like to see, where new streets are gonna be designed and put into, and we don't have, we're a city, so there's not a lot of new streets that are gonna be built or constructed. But where new streets are built or constructed, that utilities are forced to go underground. So you don't have the above.
I'll tell you, Montgomery Street in the
I
city
mean,
of
I would
Newburgh
like
is
to,
beautiful because it's
yeah.
underground.
That's an
They
expense, an
lose,
upfront
power
expense, but I
losses.
think it's a long-term cost savings too.
Mhm.
But
It really changes the whole dynamic of the street with the utilities underground.
absolutely.
Huge difference, yeah.
That expense in trying to retrofit into
Right.
an existing environment like this.
Because I think they say if this is code, it's like what's that, the form-based zoning code is going to last for 50 years. Shouldn't we take that into consideration of how utility company put the utility line, because it's going to impact the project. So we don't want to say, okay, we are going to do some new project and renovate the street, and suddenly, okay, it's either they are going under, the line can go underground, and like that's the opportunity, right? It's a focus for improvement, but at the same time, it's like, oh, after we finish the project, we say, oh, well, we're going to do the underground. So that is more like medicine say, like we spend money and for nothing, and we have to redo it again, and you just like, all right, it's kind of waste.
And this is one of their 7 big items is green, looking at it from that perspective. I mean, even creating new streets, there should be some sort of a requirement to do something like that. Because that will make that street more green to not be covered with wires.
Yeah, it's true.
It did open, so I just wanted to show you what it looked like, so this.
It must be some massive
But on Franklin Street, we had some dialogue about moving the lines from one side to accommodate. But they never talked about underground utilities.
I think it was a cost.
That's a huge.
They did have that conversation with them and the cost,
Yeah.
and then
It's
the
great.
city would have had to pay for it.
Right. And I mean, in some areas where you'd like to see underground, you're just not gonna do it, because if you're in like a historic district, you've got
Yeah.
all the archaeology issues to contend with, so, and any excavation, you deal with that. There's there's so much underground
Utilities already.
things already.
But these were
that- yeah.
future streets.
Right.
Yeah, they can design phase.
Yeah, a lot of new streets, should be noticed.
I think people are opting for it, but it is an expense.
Yeah, Stone Court's a prime example.
Underground,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Or even the one out of Kingston Meadows. That's a potential from the.
a lot of the developments are going in, like, Golden Hill will be all
Golden Hill.
underground.
Plaza Central doesn't overcharge a lot of people.
Well, you know.
Okay, well, thank you, everybody, and again, if you've got more comment or anything, just let us know, and,